How's he doing, Dr. Hartman?
His vitals are stable and he's in good health apart from still being unconscious after 8 months. I expected your husband to have recovered by now, but at this point, there's no telling when he'll wake up.
He's not my husband.
What?
I recently had our marriage annulled.
That was just a nightmare.
I see. At any rate, I wish I had better news. I have to say, I've never seen a case like this. Too much soda is bad for anybody, but it's never put anyone under for this length of time before.
At least he's not in any pain.
The best thing you can do right now is to keep him comfortable and continue speaking to him from time to time. Sometimes patients can pick up on what's going on around them in a comatose state.
Thanks again for making a house call.
Of course, and look on the bright side, your ex-husband was just published in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most Mountain Dew consumed in a single evening. It's very impressive.
I know. They sent me a copy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not mean to upset you.
Oh no, it's all right. It's just a shame he didn't take better care of himself. He was so caught up in his work. But I'm sure it'll all work out in the end.
If you notice any change in his condition, any change at all, do not hesitate to call me.
Thanks again, Dr. Hartman.
Sarah! Sarah! It's not possible. I shouldn't even dignify something so stupendously, outrageously, insultingly preposterous with a response. It's just another trick, one of my personal hell's many unsettling distractions. My wife would never forbid me from coming home, right? I know I made some mistakes. I was too wrapped up in my own writing and my videos and lived too much in my own head. But that wouldn't have been enough for Sarah to turn her back on me for a life of luxury with a suddenly conveniently successful doomsvent, would it? I'm tarnishing my own memory of the best example of human decency I've ever known just by writing about this. And we had a child together, for Bulgy's sake. There's no way in the 9 circles of hell that Sarah is capable of this. But if I'm really so sure, why can't I shake this? Why can't I get that conversation out of my mind? 266 days of this madness, and I am no closer to understanding my situation than I was on day 1, which seems more plausible. That Doomsvents, or God forbid Dan Torrey, is behind this, or that I'm still in a coma and everything I've experienced is different, conflicting aspects of my personality at war with each other, and the only things that are real are those voices on the other side. Real or not, that, Sarah, is right. I don't think I'd want to live in that world any more than I want to live in this one. But what I want and what's real are different things. No matter what faces me on the other side, I have to get back there and make the best of it. As long as the stream of comics remains constant, I will continue under the assumption that I am doing the right thing. In today's comic, a rather disgusting little nugget of trivia is revealed. According to the narration, third-person limited POV from Gareth's head, necroplasm is Malbolge's urine. Yeah, apparently Bulgy technically pees out hell spawns and hell itself. Yuck. I'm trying really hard to read this as metaphorical or euphemistic, but it sure sounds like a literal fact. I shouldn't examine this notion too closely, but what the heck, I'm in a mood and I just can't help myself. We know Bulgy isn't sole lord over hell, or at least he's not supposed to be according to the earliest Spawn issues, and certainly he didn't create hell himself, so it would make no sense whatsoever if Bulgy relieving himself was the single exclusive origin of all necroplasm in existence. I'm left to conclude then that all the line really means is that because everything in hell is made of necroplasm, so is Bulgy's urine, so if you wanted to be vile and vulgar just for the sake of it, you could call it Bulgy's urine. And technically be right, although it's also everything else you could find in hell too. Moving right along, this issue is incredibly light on story and can be fully summarized in a sentence. Shall I make the attempt? Gareth recruits the help of an Iceni man who has also been hunted by Roman Catholics to guard the necroplasm he stole from Spawn from Agents of Heaven or Hell, while Covenant is rescued from crucifixion by the boy at the end of last issue, who said to see past Covenant's evil-looking exterior because of his childlike spirit, and not realizing that the remaining citizens of his old kingdom have come to their senses and discovered Covenant isn't the massacrous murderer of their village because said killer struck again while Covenant was strung up. Covenant goes to see Cog again, who wants nothing to do with him now that he's mortal. So Covenant storms off and sulks under a tree with seemingly no purpose and no reason to live. I have no idea what effect the worms had on Covenant from the end of last issue. That's not referenced at all here. It seemed at first like it was Bulgy or just Hell at large reclaiming him, after the narration made it seem like Hell wouldn't tolerate Spawn's new unspawn-like state. I guess that whole plan was foiled by Covenant getting strung up in a field, like Tom Welling in Smallville. Okay, Covenant, you're not Spawn anymore, now you're the Crow. I gave the nice, fair-minded folks from Ryle way too much credit yesterday. This issue paints them as loyal, happy subjects of Covenant who turned on him without a second thought after the massacre, just taking it as a given that no one else could possibly eviscerate a human being except their master. So much for that business about their being secretly terrified that whole time. Wouldn't there have at least been some dissension amongst them, a group that still believed in Covenant? Over the age of 9? They really don't deserve Covenant. He's played up as selfish and arrogant for returning to them, and he is that insofar as he's ignoring the inevitable with regards to his deal with the devil, but their lives were great under Covenant's rule, and they didn't even give him a trial or a chance to prove his own innocence before they drove him out. Plus, if he had been the killer, didn't they wonder why, with all his strength, he didn't skin them all alive for trying to banish him? It's not like they'd have been able to overpower him prior to the restoration of his original red blood cell count. Come to think of it, even though I still don't buy Covenant would return home, ever, after he vowed to move on and save his people from the misery that tends to follow him around, how arrogant a move was that, honestly? So, he's a Hellspawn and he's not supposed to be able to resume his old life. He's been a Spawn for hundreds of years and Bulgy has never made a move against him until just now. Maybe. For all he knew, Bulgy got a racquetball court installed in the Ninth Circle and forgot all about him. And I can tell Niles is really trying to build up some mythos with the old gods versus heaven and hell, though since we're well over 1,000 years after the death of Christ, one must wonder why this is all just starting now. And Niles seems to be repeating a lot of Al Simmons with Covenant to illustrate the hopelessness of being a Hellspawn, but if every Hellspawn story is more or less the same, what is the point in going back to an earlier one? Covenant comes off as dense here. First he goes back as a broken mortal, knowing that won't work out, then he gets all emotional and mopey when they haven't forgiven him, even though they have, and he just conveniently left before he could find that out for the sake of pointless melodrama. And finally, he keeps going to Cog and being surprised that Cog's out for himself and doesn't really care about Covenant, just losing his curse. How did that not sink in after that war where Cog's army killed all of Covenant's friends? Did Niles read past issue 6? This is not the same character I'd been enjoying before, and I wish at this point the series had ended there. It would have been on a sour note, but that's par for the course with Spawn stories. Even the good ones usually end on a really dark note. Is that prophetic? For me? I've been turned into a Spawn. I too am being told I shouldn't go home again. How does my story end? At least I have a goal, a prize to set my sights on. My curse is also my potential salvation. As long as I have these comics, there is hope. Signed, Captain Logan.